Okay, can you explain how big of an upgrade Wood is over Powell? Yeah, he's about twice as good, I would say, roughly.
Yes, I will give you one thing. Offensively, it's like you're watching two different, Dwight Powell came from one planet and Christian Wood came from another one, okay? It's just kind of, now from a skill set standpoint, when you're talking about being able to do the pick and roll stuff, Christian Wood does that like Dwight Powell, but much better.
Yeah.
And then he's got the three-point shooting that's like the Maxi Kleber. It's almost like Kleber and Powell came together and morphed a Christian Wood sort of baby when it comes to specifically the pick and roll and the three-point shooting. So that's a beautiful thing. But when you start looking at Dwight Powell and Christian Wood from a rim protection standpoint, this is interesting. I saw this from Josh Bowe on Twitter. Want to show him some love here because this is where you start looking at, okay, when you're being realistic about what Christian Wood is going to bring you. This is the write-up. Wood displays slow feet while guarding the pick and roll and will regularly get bullied around the basket by guards that lower their shoulder. This is what he says. Slight frame. It says doesn't move as fast as he should to the ball. Athleticism will bail him out occasionally, but he only averaged the one block per season in the 2 seasons with Houston. But here it is right here. Opponent shot 63% at the rim against Christian Wood last season, which is not considered to be good enough for a starting center. And for those curious, that number for Dwight Powell last season was 62.7%. So from a rim protection standpoint, you're talking about basically the exact same player between Dwight Powell and Christian Wood, which is not good. That portion of his game, not good. Everything else about his game, I think, is substantially better than Dwight Powell.
Absolutely. I think that's a great answer at 877-881-1053. If you have other questions about this, we'll take those. If you have thoughts, 469 says bleeping awesome, Club Mavs. 214, we need a defense, duh. And you can absolutely get some more rim protection. I'm not going to fight you too hard on that point, but what he does elsewhere, I think way outweighs that when it comes to evaluating whether it was a good trade or not.
Yes.
And his ability on the perimeter, while not really stinking good, is of tremendous value because he's not a huge liability if he switches everything.
Right.
He can do a serviceable job staying in front of quite a few guys. There's Cowboys Joe Trahan. He's in the building. I understand they're going to bring by Tyler Biotish here coming up in just a few minutes. So we'll have a conversation with him as we broadcast live from Jackson Beer Garden, downtown Dallas. What you have here is a bringing together of the FC Dallas and the Dallas Cowboys community because of a World Cup match would be at AT&T Stadium. So obviously it is of interest for both parties, and they have FC Dallas players down here like Paxton Pomykal, and you have Tyler Biotish, the Cowboys center, and other Cowboys dignitaries down here as well. And I think we're going to get Tyler here before too long. Okay, other things they really solved, I think, you just didn't have enough good players. And I think that's huge right now for this Mavericks team, that you had Rick Carlisle looking towards his bench and going, oh, geez, what are we going to do? And sometimes the answer was too much Dwight Powell or too much Frank Ntilikina. And now to have Christian Wood coming in while Tim Hardaway Jr. is returning, it now makes them more credible. And on paper, they stack up much better with the other contenders because there isn't massive holes in the rotation.
Yep, 100%. Like the way the bench goes now, where, Kleber can just be coming off your bench comfortably. Dwight Powell can now be coming off your bench and not be starting for you.
Yeah.
Plus THJ, plus Dinwiddie, plus Bertans. It's like, okay, we got ourselves a respectable bench here.
I do think it confirms Nico Harrison's the right man for the job as Mavericks GM. If you needed any clarification after the Porzingis trade, now I start looking at this like maybe the hierarchy in DFW sports is, somewhat 1 and 1A, Nico and Chris Young battling back and forth for which front office, which executive should have most of our trust.
There you go.
Absolutely. And sometimes when you evaluate players, too, you look at how they play within the conference, and one of the things like, well, hey, when he played against the Mavs, how did he do? Well, maybe that's one thing. But you look at overall, though, some of Christian Wood's most productive games have been against conference opponents, teams out in the West. You look at the Lakers with Memphis, the Clippers, Portland, Utah, Denver, Phoenix. I mean, he's played some of his best, some of his most productive games as a Rocket when he was playing against these Western Conference teams. So maybe that's something that you bring into the mix as well.
How do you guys like this? I feel like I'm starting to buzz on a little bit of nicotine right now. Or can we get behind that? Are we buzzing on some nicotine right now? I think we are.
I think
I'm craving more.
Me too.
Almost immediately.
The thing about it, I think, with Nico is it sounds like to me, and again, the times I've got to visit with Mark Cuban, he's talked about it's Nico. Nico's doing this. Nico's doing this. Nico's doing that. And, that's the thing to me that I think is the most encouraging. Even though this is a first-year general manager, he's thrown him into the deep end of the pool and said, hey, go get it. And, I never believed that Mark Cuban would get rid of Porzingis. Somebody had to convince him to move on, whether it was Jason Kidd or Nico. But the fact that Nico has made some headway and got, when you start looking at, hey, as a Mavs fan, you look at what they gave up to get Christian Wood, you're like going, man, all right.
Almost unbelievable.
It was like every time you talked about a trade with the Mavs, Brunson was involved or somebody else was involved that you're like, I don't know if I want to do that.
Right, because usually you feel like when you're doing a trade, you have to give up a little something to get a little something, and unless you think the 26th pick in this year's draft in what is considered to be a relatively weak draft class is that big of a deal, then you really gave up nothing to get this guy.
Probably. I mean, there's a chance that, that late in the draft it's a really nice player, but I don't think it's going to be a player better than what Christian Wood brings to the table. Finding another big perimeter guy with skills is very tough to do. The Mavs get one at $14 million against the cap. Like, your bang for your buck against the salary cap is massive here. His rebounds and points in the paint address major problems that the Mavericks had. I mean, it's tough to put away a team slightly better than you than we saw in Golden State. When in key possessions they can crash the board and get 3 or 4 offensive rebounds and keep trying in big moments, it's a backbreaker. You're trying to hold on to a lead, and every time you turn around, the other team's getting an offensive rebound. And then maybe the points in the paint thing will be even bigger than we imagine. He shot over 70% from the floor inside of 3 feet. That's what Christian Wood does.
Special, man.
Not many guys do that. And his defensive rebounding rate over 30%.
That's the huge thing right there. The rebounding, as much as we talked about, hey, we need a center, we need rim protection, we need rebounding. Okay, well, we got half of that. We got the rebounding. We still need a little bit more of the rim protection, but he provides so much more when it comes to shot creation as well, plus the three-point shooting. I think him and Luka together is – I really feel like it's going to be pretty dang special.
Yeah, and then maybe the biggest benefit is not having to depend on Dwight Powell, and nothing against this guy, but the organization overvalued him and put him up here and acted like we can build a starting rotation around this guy, when in actuality, you need Dwight Powell to be more like your third or fourth big man.